Hello, welcome again to my channel. My name is Jeremy Lee. If you're a student in school and you're learning or you're studying about history, or simply that you're just interested about history topic, then this channel might be for you. Today we are going to talk about the chapters in the Bible where Abraham had to wait whether God will fulfill the promise or not. What promise? A promise of a child. Before we start, I want you guys to think about a moment that when you have to wait for someone to fulfill the promise. It could be someone that promised you that will buy you a bicycle, or someone will buy you a PS5, and you've been waiting. You've been waiting for days, you've been waiting for weeks, you've been waiting for months, and then you've been waiting for years. How does it feel? Yes, you will grow impatient and you will become restless and you become anxious about it, right? So now, same thing with Abraham here, okay? If you watch the previous kind of video that I made in the same playlist, then we learned that God made a covenant with Abraham. The covenant itself is like God will fulfill his promise because who he is, because of God, not because of Abraham's righteousness, but because of the character of God. He is a God of righteousness. He is a God of promise. He is a God of will keep his word. Now, in that promise, it said that Abraham will receive a descendant. The times passed. At this moment, Abraham, he was 99 years old. And then the promise was being told to Abraham when he was about 75. So if you do the math, that's about 24 years. Okay, it has been 24 years, and then it seems to be forever for Abraham and Sarah to waiting for the promise to be fulfilled. Now, it came to pass when Abraham and Sarah, they decided to buy their own birthday present. Okay, that is a weird kind of illustration. Like when I'm talking about birthday present, it's like this, okay? They've been waiting for the present that God will give it to them. It's the promise. But they could not wait any longer, so they decided to do their own way. They decided to have a child. But wait a minute, isn't it like Abraham and Sarah, they were way too old to have a child? Yes, exactly. Sarah at this moment, she was way too old. She was like about 75 years at this part of the story. Way too old to have a child. So one day, Sarah had a good idea. Actually, it's a bad idea. The good idea is, remember the part of the story when Abraham and Sarah, they went to Egypt? Yeah, there's this kind of awkward story when Abraham had to lie in front of the Pharaoh about who Sarah is. Instead of saying Sarah is his wife, he said that Sarah is his sister. Now think about that for a moment. How, if you're Sarah, how would you feel? How would you think? Like my husband lied to someone else, telling me that I'm the sister instead of the wife. Yeah, I will not gonna do that to my wife. Okay, I will not going to lie to someone and then telling my wife that she's my sister. Well, the reason why Abraham lied to Pharaoh at the time is because he was afraid. He was afraid that Pharaoh might kill him because Sarah was beautiful, and then Abraham thought that Pharaoh will have a crush on Sarah, and then Pharaoh will kill Abraham if he knew that Abraham is her wife. Anyway, to cut the story short, by the end of the trip to Egypt, the Pharaoh gave them a lots of cattle, lots of animals, including servants. Now, one of the servants is a girl by the name of Hagar. Now, Hagar worked as a maidservant of Sarah. Now, what is maidservant? So, maidservant is think it this way, probably the closest thing that you can understand this concept is like having a nanny. Yeah, so basically the maidservant will follow wherever the lady goes, okay, wherever the mistress go, which is Sarah here. She will be the one who will help Sarah for everything, including taking care of the personal needs, changing clothes, taking a bath, go to the shop, doing the homework, those kind of menial jobs. But anyway, so that is the job of the maidservant. So the maidservant are being expected to be loyal to the mistress. Now, Sarah's idea was like this. She knew that she cannot have a child anymore because she's too old. That's what she thought. And she was wondering, whether God will fulfill the promise or not. She doubted. Abraham doubted. So the idea was, why don't Abraham try to have a child with Hagar, which is the maidservant of Sarah? She's so much younger. She's so much healthier, definitely she will get pregnant easily rather than herself, like Sarah. She was 75 years old. So, and then what happened is like Abraham, well, yeah, he kind of like, agree on that bad idea because, yeah, he was wondering like, yeah, maybe he was thinking like, maybe this is the way God will bless me. Maybe this is the way that God fulfill his promise by I myself will try to make my own way, make my own way to fulfill God's promise. I will help God here. I will try to help God by trying to have a child with Hagar, which is like so much younger. But wait a minute, isn't it Hagar is like the maidservant? Yeah, Hagar is the maidservant, and probably according to the 21st century society standard, that is considered to be awkward and weird. Having a child with a maidservant? So, but by the way, back then, in ancient time, it was a common practice. So basically, during those times, the maidservant's life, everything that the maidservants have is belong to the mistress, including her body. Now, if Abraham and Hagar have a child, then Sarah can claim the child as her. Yeah? Adopt her. Not necessarily adopt her, but then again, will claim the child of Hagar with Abraham as her son, her own personal son. So that was the idea. And several months later, and they did it. And several months later, Hagar, she was pregnant with Abraham's baby. Now, as the times goes by, it turned out to be, it turned out to be a bad idea because at this moment, Hagar started to despise Sarah. What is despise? Basically, underestimate Sarah, which is her mistress. She did not respond to her instruction positively. She make fun of Sarah. She kind of like, sometimes she boasts around, hey, you know what, Sarah, my mistress, now I have the child of your husband inside of my body right now. And well, guess what? It makes Sarah feel bad. It makes Sarah feel upset with this condition. So, because of this kind of like treatment that Hagar done to Sarah, Sarah had enough, and then she started to kind of like treated Hagar cruelly by kind of like working very hard. I don't know, like what, digging the well or doing a lot of like chores that somehow is very kind of like physically demanding. Now, not just that one, Sarah also was being mean to Hagar, using kind of like, very offensive word to Hagar and so on, until to the point that Hagar could not take it any longer. She ran away. She ran away from the tent. Oh yeah, they live in the tent, by the way. Abraham and Sarah and the whole family, they don't live in a permanent house. They live in the tent because they do not have any land yet at this moment. God has not fulfilled the promise yet. Moving on, Hagar ran into the desert. And when Hagar ran into the desert, she got lost, and then she was thirsty, and then she almost died. Now, getting lost in the desert is no joke. It's a matter of life or death. Now, having no water, baked under the scorching heat of the sun, she almost died. Now for Hagar, in that desperate moment between life and death, well, she was thinking like, this is it. I'm gonna die here in the desert, thirsty and kind of like, suffering under this, heat. And then all of a sudden, Hagar, she met an angel. Hagar was the first human, well, maybe Adam and Eve, yeah, they did it too. Hagar was the first human who encountered with God's angel, yes. Now, the angel rescued Hagar, and not just rescue Hagar from death, the angel told Hagar to return to her mistress. What? Yes, to return to the tent and then serve her mistress, no matter how cruel they are to Hagar. And the angel promised to Hagar one thing, that Hagar will give birth to a son. And the angel told her that she should name the son as Ishmael, okay? Ishmael, which is Ismail. Interestingly, it became the ancestor of the Arabic people. Even up to now, our Muslim brethren, they believe that they are the descendants of Abraham or Ibrahim from Ishmael. Now, the name Ishmael means God hears, because Hagar cried in the desert, and then God hears her cry, and then God rescue her. God hears, or Ishmael. And then Hagar returned to her mistress and also to Abraham, and then she served them faithfully until she gave birth to Ishmael. Now, the conclusion. It is easy for us to think that Abraham is a good example of a character in the Bible. Actually, it's not. Abraham has a lot of flaw. One of the flaw is that one, like as I said earlier in the video, that she lied to the Pharaoh about his wife. Okay? It's an act of cowardice. Okay. Now, and not just that one. He was being impatient here. He kind of like doubt to some degree. He doubt with God's promise. The evidence was when he decided to have a child with Hagar instead of waiting for God's promise to be fulfilled. Okay, instead of waiting for miracle. But here's the interesting part of the story of Abraham. God knew that Abraham is not perfect. God knew that Abraham will lie. God knew that Abraham will not be able to wait for the promise. God knew that Abraham will make a lot of mistakes. But yet God still chose Abraham as the ancestor of Jesus, the Savior. And through Jesus, the world is being blessed. Through Jesus, the life is being blessed. Through Jesus, the promise of God that is written in Genesis chapter 3 verse 16 is being fulfilled. So next time you read the story about Abraham, the focus should be on God's character and also his faithfulness instead of Abraham's flawed characters. Let me emphasize that one. God is faithful even though we are not faithful to him. That's it for today. If you have any questions, make sure that you participate on the separate session after you watch this video. Okay, if you're my students in school, you know what to do. And what else? That's it. Thank you for watching. I see you guys next time. God bless you guys all. Bye-bye.